So, do you know what is wild? What is wild is the fact that I have built a business in another country. I've been running that business for over 4 years. I even wrote a book about how to build a business abroad. And still, to this day, I struggle with this sort of need or desire for external validation. It's a problem that a lot of entrepreneurs face, a lot of creatives face. And today we're going to talk about what you can do to get over that challenge of needing external validation. Stay tuned. So I think a lot of this stems from this idea of like, what is success, right? When you think of success, you probably think of, having a lot of money, having nice cars, taking expensive trips. All of these things are markers for success, but they're also sort of like remnants of external validation because a lot of times you get those things from making money, right? And then there is on the flip side this internal validation. And I see internal validation is kind of like how you talk to yourself, right? Like how I talk to myself when I wake up in the morning. I like to focus on things like, okay, yesterday you sent out the newsletter. Good job. Today you are recording a podcast after not having done so for 2 weeks. Good job, right? Like these are the things that I like to focus on because that's like my form of internal validation. And I feel like we're in this space these days where I see a lot of creators get burnt out. I see people, looking for what everyone else says is a good job rather than looking internally for themselves. And it's really tough, guys. And I know a lot of you that follow this channel, you want to hear what I have to say about starting a business abroad, about raising kids abroad, about doing all of these things. But I will be completely honest with you. Sometimes it does not feel good. Like that is my honest truth to you. Sometimes it just does not feel good. Um, Everything that I talk about raising kids in a foreign country, right? I talk about like this lifestyle where you're so far away from home, and a lot of people romanticize it. But the reality is, is that it is challenging. It's challenging to be apart from your family for so long. It's challenging to miss Thanksgiving and to miss Christmas the way that you used to celebrate it back home. But for me, what has worked over the years is this idea of I know where I'm headed and what I want to do. And that's my compass, which is internal validation. So I want to talk about that today in the context of what you guys might be facing and what you may be doing. So, first off, a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with this because we see what entrepreneurship is like on the news, on TV, on Netflix. There's so many shows where like somebody's, launched a business and they've, raised like $200 million and they've gone off and they've, built these amazing teams, etc. You might feel like that's what success looks like, right? Because you're using that standard. Success looks like a big raise, meaning funding. Success looks like basically people who have everything that they've ever dreamed of materially. But what does it really mean in terms of success for you? And I think that's a question that a lot of entrepreneurs kind of avoid. And it's easy to avoid it, guys. I'm not throwing shade, right? It's easy to avoid it because you want to build something where you are recognized as being successful. But the reality is that everyone's success will look different. I know for a lot of people, particularly women, their success means, okay, well, I get to do drop-offs in the morning. I get to do pickups from school, right? And that fulfills them, that they feel successful in that way. Maybe they had parents that never did that. I know growing up, like, there were times when my mom would go grocery shopping and she'd be like, okay, this is what I've purchased for the week. If you finish it up before the next shopping trip, that's on you, right? Like you got you got to kind of figure out what you're gonna do if you eat all the food, right? And so for me, it's always been like a huge thing for me, like, oh, I want to make sure my kids have, like the juice boxes and this, and like when they open their lunchbox, they have, what I want them to have, not necessarily because they want it, but because I want them to have it, because I know that sometimes growing up, we had, I'm not going to say we didn't have food. We had food, but we would like to eat the school snacks during the week, and like before it, like at the time we were not supposed to. So this is one of my markers for success. It's a piece of internal validation. Am I doing things right? Yes, because I've made sure that I was able to bake some cookies during the week or do whatever. And that's one of the markers for me. And I think entrepreneurs, we have to really think critically about what is our idea of success. If you're judging success by what everyone else says success is, you're going to feel off the mark. You're going to feel not good at some point because it's not going to be attainable for you. Right? It's not going to be something that fulfills you. When you finally get it, you might feel empty. And no one talks about this enough. Guys, I'm going to be totally real with you. So I wrote this book, self-published this book. It was released January or late December. And I worked my butt off to get this book done, from the writing to the editing process and working with the cover designer and doing everything to make sure it was released on time at a schedule that I said I wanted it to be done by. How I felt when it was done was like, whoo, I was waiting for the world to change. I was waiting for like the heavens to open, like, oh, you finally have made this particular goal, but it doesn't happen. You think that if you publish a book, or even if you sign with an agent or whatever you do, that somehow miraculously you're going to feel fulfilled. You won't. You won't, particularly if you're using that as a marker of success, which is not aligned with who you are. So I think entrepreneurs struggle with this because they get confused about these external signs and productivity. And for the most part, when you're an entrepreneur, like I said, I've been running my business for 4 years now. When you're an entrepreneur, those external signals for success will lag behind your productivity. I'll give you an example. One of my favorite authors, someone who I follow a lot, is James Clear, author of Atomic Habits. And sometimes we do like to throw shade or salt on what someone else is doing, and like, oh, how did they get there? How did they do that? How come he's so successful, right? So I go over to his blog, and I've done this before. And I'm like, what are the best practices that he's putting in place? How did he grow such a massive mailing list? How did he grow like so many followers? Do you know that this guy has consistently for several years posted his newsletter on his website? And when I tell you it's consistently, I mean every single week, the same day of the week for years on end. It is there. You can go check it, right? And I was like, here I am, right, trying to like do all of this stuff. And you want those external signals, but you're not going to get it without consistency. And so another piece of information I would say is that while you're looking for those external markers, you have to check, like, are you being consistent, right? Are you following through with what you said you're going to follow through with? Because if you're not going to see those external signals. And I'm guilty of this myself, which is why I say it, which is if you're not being consistent, you can forget about seeing those external signals because they won't come, right? I started this YouTube channel years ago. I had no idea what I was doing. I was posting sporadically, yada, yada. And then in January of this year, I said, you know what? I'm actually going to care. My goal is I had a goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers. Then I had a goal of monetizing. So we've hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm not yet monetized. We'll be doing that before the end of the year. You can hold me to it. But the point is that if you don't pay attention to something, and if you're not consistent about something, then it's not going to happen. For sure, it's not going to happen. And that's just the reality of what we live in. And social media doesn't make it any better for us, because you see a lot of people doing these great things and you're wondering, how come I can't get there? How come I'm not there? Well, it's because you haven't focused on it and you're not consistent about it. And just like when people say they want to lose a certain amount of weight, you have to focus on what you're eating. You have to focus on how much you're exercising. You got to take a log and track all of that stuff in order to get there. And I think sometimes as entrepreneurs and creatives, we may feel like the world is beating us down, but when you really look at what we're doing, this is, hey, for me too, I'm talking to myself too. When you really look at what you're doing, are you really being consistent? I don't know. I think a lot of us needed to hear that message because, we do struggle with it for sure. And another thing I'll say before I move on to my next point, this idea about, how we struggle with this as creatives and entrepreneurs. For creatives, particularly people who want to express themselves through their business, you probably feel like things when they're not taking off, like it's a personal rejection, right? So I went through this with BiteBow. We started out with legal consulting for Web3 and tech and all of this stuff. And for a while, I was getting, really great clients. Things were great. Then the market took a dip. Client flow slowed down. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? Why are people not hiring me? Why am I not getting more inbound? Well, it wasn't because people were rejecting me. It's because I wasn't focusing on marketing. I wasn't marketing. I wasn't doing sales. I wasn't doing any of that. And, hindsight is 2020, but looking back on it now, I cannot blame the market for the downflow in deals. The problem is that I wasn't marketing. I wasn't doing sales because I don't like to do sales. I don't like to do marketing. But as a result, my business suffered. So I think that's something that, guys, you really do have to focus on. You got to take a look at what you're doing and you have to be honest with yourself. Like, is this what I'm doing actually going to make a difference in me meeting those internal validation markers, not external? So I mentioned this internal validation, and a lot of you guys are like, okay, Jamelia, so what is internal validation? Is it something that you say to yourself? How does this work? And I think this is all a piece of this idea of mindfulness. So mindfulness, what does that look like? It can be meditation. It can be times where you're just silent during the day. It can be journaling. All of these things are a practice for you to get in tune with what are you actually thinking? And trust me, it sounds so simple, but most of us, to be honest, guys, most of us really don't do that during the day because we're distracted with social media. You have 101 things going on. You're moving at a crazy pace. Your life is hectic and busy, and you never stop to put down the phone, to turn off the screen, and to think, how do I feel right now? What kind of thoughts am I even telling myself about my business? Do I feel bad because I just launched something and it failed? Do I feel bad because I'm writing a business plan and I'm unsure of whether it will work or not? Do I feel good because I have this great idea in my mind, but I feel hesitant about launching it? All of these are part of mindfulness. And I submit to you that if you pause and you start to really identify these feelings, and then, the next step is to write them down, that's a huge plus. And internal validation, when you write those feelings down, and if a negative one pops up, you address it and you say, oh, well, I feel bad about the way that I launched this particular product. And then you start to ask, well, why do I feel bad? Well, what can I do better next time? Well, how am I going to do better next time? All of these things, it will really make a difference. And part of the issue is that as entrepreneurs and creatives, we're kind of disconnected from how we feel. And I think that's something we really need to change. This internal validation, it's got to come up some kind of way, because sometimes the feedback that you're telling yourself, it's not even true. It's not even true. Like in that moment when my deals were going down and clients were not flowing in as fast, I was salty. I'm not going to lie. I was salty. And I was thinking like, oh, these deals are not coming in because I'm a woman, and people don't want to be advised by a woman because I'm too senior, I'm too good. Right? I was laying it on, right? I'm too good, I'm too senior. People don't want to hear from me about this stuff, and that's why I'm not getting the clients that I should be getting. And I'm telling you guys, it's the worst thing you can do to yourself. Giving yourself negative internal thoughts is a killer. It's a killer for your self-esteem, it's a killer for your business, and it's a killer for your confidence. So you really have to be aware of that. Make sure you're not doing that to yourself. And if you are, turn it around, turn it into positive thoughts. And that's where this idea of internal validation comes from. Is that you identify the fact that you're having a negative thought, you become aware of it, and then you change it. You change it, and you have to be consistent about it, right? You've got to be consistent about this piece. But what happens when you don't focus on the internal validation and you focus on the external validation? What happens when you're simply scrolling social media and you're like, oh, this post got only 5 likes. Oh, this one got 20 likes. This one got, 100 likes. Oh, that's good. The one with 100 likes is good. That means I should do more of that. Trust me, guys. Everything I'm telling you right now, I have been through and done it. And it's really sad. It's really sad that as an entrepreneur or as someone who's creative, that you would base your entire personality or business upon what people like. But that's not what you're here to do, right? Like the art in the act of creating something is an act of expression. It's not an act of appeasement. You're not doing it to please somebody else. Now, there are some limits to this, right? What I'm saying is there are some limits. You may, if you're creating a product to sell and no one is buying it, I don't suggest you keep doing that because you'll go bankrupt, right? That's not what I'm suggesting. But what I'm saying is when you're marketing or when you're selling something, how are you expressing that? And is it resonating with people? And you have to ask yourself, am I creating something as art for me, as a way of expressing something, or am I creating something as a way of making money? And there's a huge difference in that. But what you'll see as a result of this is you'll see people shifting constantly, shifting from here, shifting from there. And for those of you that have been following me since I started Barely Legal in Web3, Barely Legal in Web3 was all about law and technology. And that's all I spoke about, law and technology. And I did that because it was part of my professional persona. And I was trying to sell the services of ByteBow, which is the consulting services. And to be very honest with you, it became creatively boring. I got to the point where I'm like, this is too narrow. I need to talk about more. There's so much more happening. There's a lot happening in the world. There's a lot happening here. There's a lot happening in people's lives, and we're not talking about it. And so that is what it looks like when you're doing something for the wrong reasons, right? And so be aware of that as you create, as you build your business. Ask yourself, why am I doing a particular thing? Am I doing it to be creative? Or am I doing it because that's basically what is going to sell? Okay. So, how do you do this over a long period of time? How do you make sure that you're not drifting away from the course, that you're not overly seeking external validation, that you're not ignoring your own internal validation markers? How do you do this over a long period of time? The first thing I would suggest is you got to get a journal. I journal every morning. I'm a big fan of this book called The Artist's Way by Julie Cameron. And it's basically talks about the importance of journaling. It's one part of the book. It's called The Morning Pages. And she talks about the need to have this free flow of consciousness in writing on your pages. And you might be like, Jamelia, what does it have to do with business? Right? I'm trying to launch a business. What does journaling have to do with a business? I'll tell you, journaling has a lot to do with starting your own business and being an entrepreneur, because there's a lot of things that you may be feeling internally that you're not able to express to others. Right? I can't tell you how many times I thought, I'm going to express something to my husband. He's going to understand me. And he's like, huh? What? It just right over the head, right? And that might be the same for you as well. It becomes more and more difficult to express what you're going through as an entrepreneur with those who are close to you, because the entrepreneurial journey is really about yourself and it can become lonely at times. So journaling helps with that. And it also keeps you consistent. If you're writing on Monday that you're going to post a short form content every single day that week, and then you get to Friday and you're journaling and you don't address that commitment that you made to yourself on Monday, you got a problem. You better go back and be like, wait a minute, now I'm just sweeping things under the rug, right? So it does keep you honest. And it, I think it also makes you more intentional about your focus of what is a marker of success, an internal market of success. If you make a commitment on Monday that you're going to post every single day until Friday, a short form content, and you do it, that's success. It's the commitment that you've made to yourself, not the result of what has happened. That's a different issue, right? If you post every day and every piece of content bombs, that's a different issue than whether or not you actually posted. So I think you guys should try that. If there's one thing you take away from this video, start with journaling. You're trying to distinguish between what is external validation, what's internal validation. Start with journaling and really start to write out these challenges that you're having in your business, your need to commit to things. And even if it's not about business, maybe you have a plan to move abroad and to start a family abroad, or to build a business abroad, right? Start with your plan and start talking out those feelings. Make sure you are super clear about your why. Why are you even doing this? Right? If anyone has to understand and believe your motivations, it's you. So, final words for everybody that's watching. First of all, I want to thank you for watching this video. As you guys know, this content is really coming straight from the heart. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter yet, make sure you sign up. The link is in the description below. It's the Arbitrage Mindset. And I send out mailings every Tuesday about this journey of building a business, growing your wealth abroad, and just really this expansion of who you are. So make sure you sign up for that if you haven't done so. Be great to hear from you in the comments. I would love to know, what one thing are you going to do to put into practice, distinguishing your internal validation from external validation markers. All right, guys, take care. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.